Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Additionally, the agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city's website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission. The roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission are outlined on the reverse side of tonight's agenda. State law establishes planning commissions. The commission is comprised of 9 members, all of whom have volunteered to serve. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. The other individuals seated at the dais this evening are the representative of the city's planning department, the city's attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates. If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward when recognized and provide your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. At this time, I ask that all cell phones, Blackberries, PDAs, or any other devices that might disrupt this meeting please either be placed in silent mode or turned off. For items that are not public hearings tonight, I will provide an opportunity for public comment. Kathy, the roll call, please.
Mr. Edmonds?
Here.
Mr. Hudson? Mr. Kempen?
Here.
Mr. Krent? Mr. Zanzika?
Here.
Mr. Shepke?
Here.
Mr. Schultz?
Here.
Mr. Stratt? Mr. Tagle?
Here. Our second item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Could the audience just show me by hands how many are here for the Midwest Metals item? Would anyone on the commission care if we rearrange these a little bit and put them up in the front part of the agenda?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I apologize to the Planning Commission and to those in attendance. We're having some technical difficulties. They're being taken care of remotely. I'm not going to be able to display anything on the screen for a couple of minutes, but I will eventually. So again, I apologize. We'll get there shortly. So I'm not going to be able, for the first couple of minutes, we're not going to be able to point to the screen on this matter, but we'll get there.
All right. Well,
I have no problem rearranging. If you would like to move
Item
item
number
7 up to number 1 and
well, actually up to number 5.
okay, up 4A.
Yeah, that'll do it. Do I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Yes, Mr. Edmonds. Roll call.
Second by Mr. Edmonds.
Thank you. Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
All right. Item number 3, the approval of the minutes from the February 12th regular meeting. Do I have a motion? Mr. Edmonds.
I would move to approve as published.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Mr. Kempen seconds.
Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
All right, item number 4. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment for items that are not on the agenda? Yes, sir. These are for items that are not on the agenda.
Right.
Okay.
I can do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Dangle, is it?
It's Tagle.
Dangle, I'm very bad with names.
That's all right.
Okay, I've been going to a lot of these meetings that say, what type of city do we want to live in? And you people are one of the protectors of our city, of how we want to, what we want in this city. So no matter what these people want, I would have been in a city hall meeting when Mayor Daniels was mayor. A guy brought in a thick book. It was probably 4 inches thick, slammed it down and said it took us 8 years to work on our zoning in the city of Troy. Now, ever since then, you guys been on overtime. And all I'm saying to you, this May, we're going to have a deciding factor in this city. No matter who's the mayor, that's going to be the 4th vote on the thing. So all I'm saying to you, you guys are our protectors of what we want in the city of Troy, or what's going to be in the city of Troy. And that's all I want. And the city manager is trying to ask people like myself to look at the city as a clean slate, like, don't forget about the past, whatever happened, whatever my feelings is towards anybody in this room. I should overlook that, because now we're going to have a city. What type of city do we want into the future? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for items not on the agenda? All right, we'll move to the next item, 4A, and this is a public hearing. It's a special use and preliminary site plan review, file number SU-401, proposed Midwest Industrial Metals Incorporated, 2222 Stevenson Highway, Section 26, currently zoned IB, Integrated Industrial and Business District.
Yes, thank you. Good evening to the Planning Commission. As the Chairman alluded to, this is a special use application for a material recovery center at 2222 Stevenson Highway. The applicant is proposing to reutilize a portion of their interior existing facility for a materials recovery center. The site was previously operating without a special use approval for a materials recovery facility. However, by court order late last year, the facility was required to stop, and then hence they're coming in now for site plan approval as well as special use approval in order to bring their site up into conformance with the zoning ordinance. The applicant has submitted a site plan which indicates that all work and all existing outdoor storage will be moved interior to the site. The only exterior storage or use on the outside proposed is a dumpster located along the north property line. I just would like the applicant, when they give their presentation, to confirm that the site plan is indicating the only use of outside use or storage is that dumpster location. In regards to this type of use, there is a requirement for screening. They are required to provide a minimum 6-foot opaque fence or wall along the property line. The applicant has noted that they are proposing to install slats within the 10-foot existing chain link fence on the north and south property line. However, we have received notification from the northern property owner that they actually own the fence and they are not willing at this point to agree to allow the applicant to put in the slats. So as a requirement, the applicant will have to come back or resubmit some sort of solution to deal with a fence or screening. The applicant does have sufficient area within their site to put in the required screening as well. The site plan has been reviewed by engineering and fire, and they do not have any concerns regarding access and circulation. And again, this is predicated on no outdoor storage or outdoor use in the rear of the facility. The applicant does meet all other zoning requirements, and they are bringing the site into conformance and compliance and reducing the potential impact on surrounding properties. That being said, we do recommend approval, provided that the applicant again can confirm the no outdoor use or storage in the rear of the site, as well as work with staff and resubmit screening that meets the zoning ordinance requirements prior to getting final site plan approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Just a moment. Just a moment. All right, I'll open the public hearing. Whoever, there was some people behind you that raised it. Oh, the petitioner, come on up, make your presentation.
Good evening. Robert Stefani, appearing on behalf of the petitioner. At this point, I believe that the report as prepared is accurate. I just want to add a few things. Since the time that this matter was brought to the petitioner's attention regarding noise issues on the property, which was back in October, all sorting operations at this business have been moved indoors, and we've been in compliance with regard to any noise issues at the property. There is now no storage outside of the property. There's no material being dumped outside the property for sorting. The only storage that's out there, again, is there's 2 dumpsters for waste management, which are used for general trash. As I understand it, the report recommends that there is no storage on the rear of the property or bins put on the rear of the property, and that we've been in compliance with for several months. There are trailers parked back there, but those again are removed, but they're not used for storage. We do have some pictures of the site as it sits. These were taken today that I can present to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
These were just taken this afternoon to show that the property has been maintained. With regard to the screening, We've been made aware recently that the property owner, which is the naming company regarding this fence on the northern property line, they claim that they own it. It sits right on the property line, and I haven't really looked into yet who actually owns the fence. Once we determine that, we'll address the issue of putting up opaque screening, whether it means we have to put up a fence against the fence to do it. We're going to take care of that with slatting or fiberglass screening. This time, there really is nothing else to add regarding the operation. We have no outstanding violations with the city, and the report as drafted should be approved by the commission.
Any questions for the petitioner?
Just so for the record, I have Mark Hewins with me. He's the president of Midwest Industrial Metals, and Troy Shantos, who is our architect that prepared the plans that you're seeing here today.
All right.
I do have a question.
Mr. Schultz.
2 questions. One, is this a 24-hour operation?
The operation is basically an 8 to 5 business. You have people that are there earlier and until 6 o'clock, but they're open for operation from approximately 8 to 5.
And the east end of the building has 2 overhead doors. Is the business run with those doors open or closed?
You've got 1 overhead door and 3 dock. So the dock doors would be open when there's a trailer in it. The other door would be open.
I can't hear him.
Sorry.
Could you step up to this mic?
They'll all have to sign in also.
The 3 dock doors would be open when there's a trailer backed into the dock. The overhead door would be open when cars are coming in and out. And in the summertime, sometimes the doors are open for ventilation, just to get a breeze.
Okay, my concern is a metal sorting operation, like an awful lot of noise can go into the adjoining
And that
residential area.
we have exhaust fans, and we can run, we can open the alley door instead for that ventilation.
And again, the offloading and the sorting is being done inside the facility. So the doors are open to allow the vehicles to pull up to the dock. The material is then brought inside and sorted, and
They actually back the whole vehicle.
back the vehicle inside the building.
Does the entire vehicle get inside the building, or is some?
I mean, it's a long bay. You can get a truck and a trailer in there.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Well, if you'd like to have a seat, open the public hearing. Please step forward, sign in, state your name. I don't know. Well, I'll ask him again.
Sign in here.
Yes, please, sir.
You ready for us?
Yes, sir. Please.
Back here in December, Judge Drury told these people that they had to stop all noise on that premises, and they fined them $250 for the noise. They paid the $250, and the very next day to the very present, they have not stopped 1 iota. Our park manager lives 2 blocks away, and these people actually wake him up in the morning with a crashing of steel. Now, her house and our house and them are a meter away from that fence. And they bring in, on Saturday mornings, they bring in a gravel hauler trailer and a backhoe, and they spend all Saturday loading this chipped steel into these gravel hauler, and we can hear it all over the park. There's 200 families in that park. I went around the corner and I stopped at the front door and knocked on the door. Nobody was there. I went around, and the man was pulling out, and I said to him, I said, that noise bothers all these people there on Saturday morning. And he says, well, we're getting the ordinance changed, he said, and you people are going to have to live with it. That's exactly what he told us. And I said, well, this isn't fair to us, He said, well, you'll put 30 people out of work. And I said, well, there's 200 people that live over top of that fence. And their house, but how close are you? 10 feet, 12 feet from the fence? The guy that's next door, his mother is ill in the house. He's only 5-10 feet from that house. that fence. The guy next door to him has a little baby boy, and they can't sleep. And this goes on all day long. And it's been going on for a year now, or almost a year, as long as they've been there. And they say that they aren't making any noise. That is wrong. They do not stop one iota.
Okay.
So, the city recorded 440 decibels with them, and it's supposed to be 68 decibels over that fence.
Do you know when it was recorded?
Gary Bowers.
No, when? Do you know when it was recorded?
Maybe September, October, summertime.
Okay, all right.
And it has not stopped, honestly.
Is that before Judge Jury's order or after?
Well, that went to court with it, I think. That was the reason for the $250 fine was because.
No, but this record, that was before that.
Yeah. Okay?
Any other questions? Thank you.
The park is very upset, the people in the park, so.
Thank you.
This lady lives real close. Right behind it. And they raise that big ball up and it bounces down on the refrigerators and stoves and everything. And this flies all over. Last summer in the fall, they would blast those things down, and that stuff would cut right through my screen. And I got a piece of that in my eye one day. I said, well, this is enough of this. I mean, you'd think they would have a little respect for us. If they want to work here, they should put up a fence back there so we don't have to go through all of that. And it is very disturbing. I'm older and I sleep late, but that's not my problem. I'm worried about things flying in the air, and we got enough stuff in the air without having that flying around, you know. Right. But this was before we started all of this business. This is why it started, because they were not very respectful of us back there. Because I told them, just because we live at the mobile home park doesn't mean you don't respect us, because we are Troy citizens, you know. And I appreciate all that you do to try to contain that. And if you can't do nothing with the noise, please put a fence behind my house. I'm right directly behind it there. They put a fence up to the next door neighbor to me, and he's got a fence up behind his house, but they left me out on that. So I feel like that we deserve a little bit more care, you know, and attention, because we are citizens like everyone else.
Right.
Just because we live in a mobile home park. Do you want to say something?
Yeah. I'm a little bit further away, and I don't hear it so much inside my house, but outside it's very loud. And after they ordered them to stop, the next day they were just as loud when I came outside. So I'm not looking forward to this summer if they don't tone down the noise, because I work outside a lot in the yard.
Okay, all right. Would you ladies sign in, please, before you sit down? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this particular topic? Come on forward. You'd hand those to Mr. Savant there, and we can pass those through.
Mike Damon, AJ Damon Company, 1180 East Big Beaver. We own the building that's not shown here, but we'd be to the north of the property. And they're talking about putting slots, I believe, on the fence, correct? And we've fixed the fence once already. It's actually our fence. It's not their fence. It's not on their property. It's on my property. And they've been a problem, as the people before have said. They continue to do outside work. They have outside storage. These photos demonstrate that. The photos are from today. And the original plan that they submitted, what they talked to me about was a concrete wall that would match or mirror the existing concrete wall that's there, which is 9 feet off the grade. And then they resubmitted with this slot idea. We've had trouble leasing the building. Our building is vacant because of them. People don't want to be by a junkyard. So, you know, it's problematic for us from an economic standpoint. And I think if there's going to be any solution, it would have to include a, you know, poured concrete wall that matches the existing wall, which is 9 feet off grade. I just don't see any other solution. I don't want to continue to have to fix my fence, and their solution's not going to work because they want to alter my fence, and they need to put in a concrete wall, in my opinion.
How is your fence being damaged?
I'm sorry?
How is your fence being damaged?
Well, they've, I don't know, have you ever been over to the property?
I've not been on the property.
I mean, it's basically a junkyard. I mean, they dump all this stuff out of the ground. They've removed the asphalt. There's no asphalt. If you look at the first photo, it's a big mud pit right now. These photos are from today, and yeah, they dump everything in the ground, and then they put it in bins and sort it. And they say they're going to sort everything inside, but you can't unload a truck inside a building. That building's not that tall. So I don't really have much faith in that occurring. And so the debris, and then they put these things against the fence, and then they hit the fence. And it's really a nuisance.
Okay.
It's a junkyard. And I don't care what they do back there, but I'd like a concrete wall. And that's previously how the ordinance used to be. I guess maybe there's something new. I don't know.
Yeah, there are
Does the
some.
ordinance allow just slat wall there?
Yes, it does.
All right. For outside storage, right?
Is there any specificity with the slat
Just-
wall?
It speaks to the opacity of the fence. It does not speak to material. So it can be a chain link fence with slats.
What's it called?
Sorry?
What's the ordinance require?
80% opacity.
80% opaqueness?
Yes.
All right. For storage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. But they're not storing, they're processing back there.
It's 80% screening, irregardless of what the particular use is in the back there.
Right. And what's their use according to your ordinance?
Their use, they're in for a special use rule for material storage recovery facility, and that's interior. Outdoor storage is a special use, and they're not proposing it at this time. If they do any outdoor storage, it's in violation of the ordinance, and they would have to cease operations.
There's pictures from today where they're storing stuff outside. Have you visited the site?
That would have to be an enforcement issue, and we can always send our enforcement officers up there to check on it.
Have you visited the site?
Yes, sir.
How long ago?
I was there last week.
I don't know what you're seeing, but there's...
Well, I just want to remind the Planning Commission, we take the applicant at their face value for what they're proposing. If they do get approval for this facility and they do not get approval for outdoor storage, which they're not requesting, that's an enforcement issue. The city will enforce that ordinance. But we have to take the applicant at their face value of what they're proposing and what they're swearing to as approval of tonight.
All right, Score. I think you had a problem.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Lynn Irwin, and I work for New Dimensions, which is directly south of the business. My company that I work for is probably affected more than anybody. We share a common alley. It's the only drive that they have to take their trucks to the back, to get weighed, get their stuff. They have one way in, one way out. Constantly, they are, can you get your trucks out of the way? That's where my bay door is, for where my company gets all of our deliveries at. My UPS, my FedEx guys have been harassed several times well, you're taking up our space, you're taking up our space. No, that is not your space, that's my space. They've had several trucks that are way too tall for the power lines that have gone through. They've knocked my power lines out 2, maybe 3 times. Nothing pretty much since January, because I've tried to be compliant. I've worked with these people. They give me Mark, they give me Dan, they tell me to call them, you call them, nobody answers, you know, can you get your trucks out of the way so my UPS and my FedEx delivery guys can get in there? Well, we'll get them out of there sooner or later. They're just not workable, I guess is what I want to say. More often than not, they have an entrance off of Stevenson that goes direct to the back. I have one that we share with Metro 25 Tire. I cannot tell you how many times their 18-wheelers come all the way across. They go across our parking lots. They're eating up they've ruined our sidewalks. The trucks are just too heavy to go across that kind of blacktop, I guess you would call it. I was always thought that this was light industrial. This is not light industrial that these guys are doing there. They say that their bay doors on the south side are always closed. They didn't say nothing about the bay doors that's next to me. It's open all day long. Noise, noise, noise constantly. I mean, I cannot go outside and not hear bang, 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 bang. There's always metal and stuff that's all across the alley that our UPS trucks, our trucks, because my company also, we move printers in and out with our vans, that we have to, like, I can't tell you how many times I have to go out there and I have to sweep in front because of all the metal and stuff that's around in the parking lot. They don't never clean it up. They really don't care. We have tried to be nice about it. I just don't think that that is the kind of business that, for the industry that we are all in, because we're a printing computer company. There's packing that's with us, and Dask and Electricals behind us. We're all light industrial. We don't do all the noise. I'm very upset. I have been a Troy resident my entire life. My whole family has lived in Troy. I worked in Troy my whole life. We called the cops. They burned some bad stuff that was out there this summer. They got fined. We understand that. They're like, oh, we didn't know about that. I don't understand how a industrial business, they're moving metal back and forth, how they can afford, or not afford, that's not the right word. They have these 18-wheelers that come in. I'm talking big trailers, some of them 2 trailers. They have one way in, one way out. They have no circular for these guys to go out. I can't tell you how many times that other trucks, there are people that are coming there to recycle, and believe me, I'm an avid recycler. We recycle everything. We recycle all ink cartridges, the whole bit. These vehicles that are parked in line that want to do their recycling, they have to back up because the 18-wheelers come in, they go on their weigh scale, and I understand that. They have no other way to get out. There's no other access out. All they can do is back up down the other way. They have backed up Stevenson Highway several times. Cars parked down because they're waiting to get in. It makes absolutely no sense to me. How would the city of Troy allow a company to come in there that doesn't have a pull-through access, especially if you're allowing large trucks, 18-wheelers and trailers coming in? They should come in, go on the scales, pull out another way, and keep going, not have to back out the same alley. I've talked to Mark and Dan a couple different times, and they turned around and told me that we didn't own the alley. No, I don't own the alley, but I share the alley. One side is mine, one side is yours. You cannot park your trucks numerous times last fall. Can you please get your trucks out of the alley so my delivery trucks can get in? Well, we'll get to it, we'll get to it. And most of the time, they pass the buck off to the front office ladies that, and I understand, all they can do is, we'll try to help you, Lynn, we'll try to help you, Lynn.
All right, well, thank you. Would you please sign in? Anyone else from the audience like to speak to this matter? Right.
Thank you again for allowing me to speak, Commissioner. I do live in that trailer park, and all I hear is their things backing up all day long, the beeping noise. But I noticed last summer they didn't cut the grass. I know it's legal in Troy to have grass 11 inches tall, but it looked like they stretched the limit. I've had flat tires in my car because of real fine grain. My tires cost $375 a piece, okay? I don't know who this, I'm talking to you, but you consulted over there. I just went to a meeting yesterday that what type of city does Troy want? And Troy wants honest people in this city because they're having less inspectors, less enforcement code things. And if we're going to bring in companies, we got a bird dog. Apparently, we need different consultants to advise our people that before you invite, because they came in on a special thing to come into our city. And they keep extending. They want more special, more special, more special stuff. And I'm saying, what type of city do we want? And I'm saying to you guys that this May is going to be big time in Troy. And no matter what these guys want, and I'm telling you, if they're dumping stuff on the ground, he might have meant cement, on the ground, and they have storage sheds, that's the best way to get rid of bad chemicals, because you pour it on the ground, it goes into the ground. You put stuff in a storage shed, you poke a couple of holes in the barrels, and the stuff leaks down into the thing. That's the reason why there's laws in a lot of cities. You cannot park a trailer except if it's on a asphalt or has a drain to it. So if they're trying to do that trick, it's going into the drainage. All right, now I'm a health and safety man from the GM. I understand that stuff. All I'm saying to you is this particular company, I understand it, but we spent $1 million fighting Hooters over signage. It didn't look right. Now, somebody didn't want to turn right into Troy and see garbage, but if you turn left into Troy, what do you see? You don't want to be there, and I'm telling you right now, traffic is backing up from 16 Mile all the way to the trailer park because you guys are doing, somebody came into that commission and they're all going north, but people spend a long time looking at that company now. Before they just drove, now all I'm saying to you, that be careful who we're going to allow in this city and where we're going to put stuff. Have a good day.
Please sign in, Mr. All right, anyone else from the audience? Ma'am, or do you have something different to say?
Yeah, one more comment, and I don't think you guys have noticed it, but I work there 5 days a week.
Right.
And every morning I've been coming in at 7 o'clock, and they have a big red trailer that is, I'm assuming, collecting metal, and they are parking it in the front, along the side by the Stevenson Highway exit. And then in the morning, when I get there, within 20 minutes, they're moving it, they park it along next to their building, and then they get it out of there. And they've also had their, the big yellow posts that are in front of your gas meters, which that's protective, that those should be there. That post has been knocked down 2 months at least, and they've never straightened it out and repaired that. And that is got knocked down, I'm assuming, by the big tractor trailers that they're going through there. They're just not paying attention to what they're doing over there. And that trailer should not be.
Thank you. Ma'am, did you have a question, Mr. Edmonds?
Yeah, when that post has been knocked down for 2 months, has anybody ever reported that to the?
Yes, I did report it to the city of Troy. And they told me that they would check into it and get back to it.
Thank you.
And I also reported that the trailers has been parked there, but I don't think the trailer, I don't think the trailer gets parked there until after hours, late, and it's a big red tractor trailer on like heavy duty that they park right up front, and it's at the edge of where we park on, it's on their property, but it still shouldn't be parked there.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Would you like to come forward, sir?
A few items that need to be clarified here. First of all, complaints from the residents of the trailer park. Since last October, the operation, once we were made aware of the noise violation, we were in court over that. We resolved that. I believe Gary Bowers has been out a number of times checking the noise level at the site and has found no further violation. So this is an industrial area abutting the trailer park. No one is coming in here and being able to, everyone wants to say it's Midwest Industrial Metals that's creating this noise. There is several other businesses in that area that are creating noise problems, if one exists. But putting those issues aside, we have recently purchased another facility outside the city limits of Troy where all this sorting is going on. It is no longer happening, as Mr. Damon indicates, in the back of the facility. There's no dumping going on. There's no sorting. There's no heavy equipment outside. None of that is happening here. It's all being done at our other facility at this point. So anything that they're claiming was going on last October is not happening today, nor is it going to be happening in the future. So I don't believe that to be a valid issue any longer. These issues about these trailers parking in that alley belongs to Midwest Industrial Metals. They have the right to use it how they see fit. If the neighbor doesn't like it, that's really not their issue. Shouldn't be their issue. We see no proof of any of this. We've heard all these complaints, particularly from the printing company, apparently about backing up traffic and tractors being parked in the alley. None of that is being proven here today. This is an industrial area. It's being used in accordance with what it's zoned for. Lastly, this issue of the fence. There's the property that would be a neighboring, which would be the west property to the immediate northwest. If you look in their lot, they have more debris and trash in that lot in outdoor storage than we do. And yet, Mr. Damon isn't claiming that there needs to be a brick wall put up there. We are going to address the issue of the screening in accordance with what the planning, planning consulting, thank you, consultant has recommended. We're going to, if necessary, we'll put up a separate fence with the opaque necessary screening. There's nothing that requires my client to put up a block wall other than for the aesthetic benefit of the adjoining property owner. Because there isn't going to be one on the other side of the property, and there doesn't need to be. But we're going to screen all that in accordance with what the consultant has recommended. But I need to stress that this operation at this point, there's nothing happening outside. Any of the noisy operation, some of the issue of this cramming down in dumpsters, that may have happened last fall. We're not going to deny that. All that operation now is at our other facility and not happening here anymore. So, and if it had been, I suspect Mr. Bowers would have visited us by now and written us another ticket for noise. But I know he's been out there several times since. So I haven't heard anything here from the public comment that would warrant the Planning Commission not approving our special use permit. I mean, based on the report as presented.
Mr. Edmonds?
Where is your other facility?
It's in Pontiac. We purchased a very large parcel of land that we have basically doing a redevelopment on that is going to house the large portion of bringing in the semis and the outdoor sorting and storage. So we acquired that property in December.
Just as a follow-up, I was out there today and drove around both facilities, even around both the facilities to the north and to the south. And I didn't see anything in the facility to the north, even that, I didn't see anything that would be unusual there. So I would disagree with your statement that they have more stuff in their yard than you do.
Just dumpster-wide. We have our dumpsters. I mean, I provided you the pictures of what the lot, and in fact, I think your car may have been in the lot in one of the pictures.
Thank you.
So.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
Yeah, I have one. Can I see those? So you were saying that these photographs were taken today?
Yes.
Okay, well, then we have a discrepancy because we have two sets of photos and both people are claiming that they were taken today and they're completely different. So something's wrong.
Mr. Hewins took the pictures. What time did you take them?
Actually, Dan took the pictures, took them about 2
These
p.m.
are the ones that you had given us?
That would be from.
No, that was
Those
for
are from Mr.
Damon's pictures. Appears to be a discrepancy here.
Brent, have we had any reports made by trips out by the enforcement group that says they are in compliance with the noise ordinance?
Sue, feel free to jump in if I'm stating anything that's an error. The last inspection that we can look at here in the records was in November by Mr. Bowers.
I don't know that's true.
That's the last one that we've got in front of us, but we're trying to pull that up now. There were some inspections to the site. One of the gentlemen stated that he was ticketed and paid a fine, and that is correct. I will say that the gentleman at the podium stated that I believe he said it was over 400 decibels. The inspection record that we have indicated that it was in excess of 75 decibels. So we've got some photographs, and that was in September of 2012. We've got some photographs that we could distribute, but I mean, you've seen photographs of what it looks like today. We've got photographs of what it looked like in September and October, and it's dramatically better than what it was. I mean, some of the things that were stated, in terms of the debris and the metals and whatnot, it's all true. It was pretty bad. Okay. I don't know what would be served by us circulating it, but trust me, it's pretty nasty.
Is it normal practice when an officer goes out to look, an enforcement officer goes out to look, there is a report made every trip he makes or they make?
Yes.
I can
Go ahead.
jump in. Actually, I brought our city attorney file for the enforcement issues. Gary Bauer was out there in September, and at that time, the gentleman mentioned a ticket that was issued in front of Judge Drury. Gary wrote a letter to the owner, apparently, thank you, in August saying that there was some problems with visibility above a fence line. In September, Gary Bowers of our code enforcement reported that he had been back for another visit and noted materials dumped and stored in the rear elevation, steel being placed in a large dumpster and compacted by an excavator, creating very loud noise. That's what he measured at 75 decibels, and materials visible from adjacent properties. When that wasn't taken care of, the first ticket was issued with a violation date of October 2nd, 2012. Judge Drury was on the bench that date when the defendant pled guilty and paid a $250 fine, and Judge Drury did tell him no more outdoor storage. However, the real problem became whether or not the people, the owner of the property, had failed to obtain special approval, and so we have a case pending. Judge Drury is now retired with Judge Boley for failing to obtain special use approval, which has been delayed pending tonight's meeting. So the judge is waiting to see what this board does in terms of what your enforcement action will be. We have been working with the attorney who has held his clients to the grindstone, made sure the application was filed, and has, just based upon conversations with Mr. Bauer, has cleaned up the site considerably since he was out there. It appears there's still maybe some minor problems based on pictures that were taken today. But the real issue becomes moving any outdoor storage inside, which is what the application is for today,
And of course, you have your own discretion to make whatever decision you want. I'm just telling you this by way of background. You don't have to do anything based upon what you've heard from me. It's just that I want the audience to know, and also this board to know, that we are an enforcement entity, and we will be out there often to check. And we have been, and Mr. Bowers has been following this. And the attorney has been working with our office to make sure that he's trying to get this site cleaned up. And Mr. Bowers will be following up. So whatever your decision is tonight, no matter what happens, Mr. Bowers will be following up to make sure that all code violations are in compliance.
Thank you.
If I may just add a couple points here. As Ms. Lancaster pointed out, the ticket that was written in October was one for dumping and storing outside. And once we were aware of that violation and we paid the fine, that's when that operation ceased, okay? And that's when we decided we're going to need to get this other facility in Pontiac to do this work. So that's when that took place. You know, we've worked our way through the system on this in terms of getting the applications done. As soon as we became aware of these problems, we were not aware, just to understand, it wasn't a matter of us not getting a special use permit because we didn't want to. We weren't aware we needed one. And when we were first written the ticket, that's when we first became aware that this operation needed a special use permit, and we immediately proceeded to apply for one. Lastly, the one issue regarding the dirt, the unpaved area and the parking lot at the back, that has always been
It was a 1-inch, the previous owner had put in a 1-inch cap of asphalt. So any trucks driving over, it became gravel. It's become dirt and gravel.
But once the weather breaks, that area is going to get all paved so that the parking lot will have been cleaned up and you know, it'll all be sinuous material, pavement all the way from the front to the back. So there'll be no more exposed dirt in the back at this point. So we're just waiting on the weather to allow us to do that. So at this point, again, the operation is dramatically different than it was when this first became an issue back in October. So.
Any other questions for the, yes, Mr. Edmonds?
When you say it's going to be paved, do you mean concrete, or are you talking about more asphalt?
We're gonna put, the asphalt that was there was not installed correctly. They didn't have the proper aggregate base down, and it failed. It was that way when we bought the building. We took it up. The asphalt they're going to put down, obviously, is going to have the proper, you know, aggregate base with an asphalt cap, which is exactly what the parking lot is. So.
Yes, Mr.
I wanted to follow up. So the trucks that are using that facility, they meet the load limits and standards?
As far as we know, they do. I mean, we're certainly, you know, we have a scale that they drive on, but we don't load the trucks. I mean, the trucks are coming in. We assume they're complying with the legal load limits that are imposed.
But you're not aware of the legal load limits?
No.
When they go across your scale?
Yeah,
yes.
Once they come across the scale, we would know what they weigh.
Have you ever rejected a load for being overweight?
No.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Shepke.
Yes, I'm concerned, you know, there's been some talk about your neighbors about debris spilling out from your vehicles and the common access to both of the properties, and that she has to go out there and clean it up. And first of all, I thought maybe according to law, shouldn't your trucks be covered or tarped or something like that to keep debris from?
They are. I'm not aware of the debris. I mean, if someone's pickup truck comes down the alley, like any alley or Home Depot, you know, if they have nails on their tailgate, you know, it's hard to watch every truck that comes in and out, but we do sweep regularly when the weather allows.
And again, I will only point out that we're just hearing about some of this now, and nothing's been presented to the board of concrete proof that this is even happening. I mean, this is a public alley out in front. It's on a major thoroughfare that has a lot of traffic on it. To say that that material is strictly coming from material being brought into my client's business without any further proof is mere speculation.
Yeah, speculation or not, I've been in, worked in stamping plants in a lot of my life, and that metal, those pieces of debris can be very, very sharp, and I think they can be a hazard, especially if they're in any way make access out on our roads. So I think that there has to be some way that maybe this thing can be monitored. I also don't like the way your company has been infringing on your neighbors that they can't conduct business as usual by not getting their trucks in and out. So there's got to be a lot of cooperation. You know, everybody's going to make a living, and I can understand that time is money, but I think maybe there has to be some more courtesy extended to those around you to try to make this situation work, because you're in a confined space, and I understand that your access in and out of this facility. I like the idea that you are paving the property out there, because there are a lot of chemicals used in the stamping process, you know, dope and dye wash and stuff like that, where those chemicals can get into that ground and eventually could affect the water table. But I'm glad that you're paving that, and if you put a correct base down, it'll probably be just fine. But right now, it looks like a real mess back there.
And I want to address something. The material that my client brings is non-ferrous metal. These aren't stamping scraps.
They're not stamping scraps?
No, these are primarily copper and brass and stainless and they come in rather large pieces. Which reminds me, there was some comment earlier that they're hearing chipping noises going on, and that was raised in court. We don't have a chipper on site. We don't process material. We don't do anything to it other than sort it and take it away. So if they're hearing chipping noises, it's coming from another business, and because there's no type of machinery in our facility that processes or chips metal. And so I don't know where that noise is coming from. I addressed that with the homeowner back in December when we were in court. I don't know where it's coming from. It's not coming from us.
If I may speak to the shared usage in the alley, we own about 2/3 of it. The neighbor to the south owns about 1/3 of it. For much of the time, they have a blue van parked in their section of it and have to use our portion of it to get to their door, which is on the alley. They've also, FedEx trucks living there have blocked our part of the alley many times, and we've just asked the driver nicely if he could, you know, speed it up as soon as he can, but we've never called and gone crazy on them or whatever. We feel we've shared the alley quite decently with them. Anytime they've asked us to ask people to move trucks, we've asked them to. A lot of times these are trucks coming from other companies who aren't aware that the alley's not all ours. They'll pull into the lot, and because there's no fence, there's no barrier, they don't know what part of the alley is ours, what part is theirs. We've immediately gone out and asked them to move their vehicles. So it's my feeling that we've tried to be very neighborly in that regard as to sharing the alley.
And I'll resonate with what Commissioner Shepke said. We don't have a problem cooperating with our neighbors. If there's an issue regarding this use or this material that they claim is out in the street, if there's a problem, we can monitor the street. Well, certainly now that that's been made aware, we will take the efforts to have one of our guys go out and take periodic looks to the extent that we can keep it clean. I mean, it is a public street. We can't be out sweeping it daily. If we have a problem we created, we'll take care of it. Same thing with this access issue. If we're creating a problem that's infringing on a neighbor, so long as we're using our property properly, we'll cooperate with them to resolve that. I mean, we're not interested in having conflict over operating our business at this point.
I'm glad to hear you're going to have an ongoing dialogue, because I think that's important too.
And we have no problem with that.
Thank you.
Did you also hear the claim that one of the trucks knocked down power or has knocked down power? Are you aware of that?
I've never been made aware of that. I
would have taken ours out with it.
Yeah, we're on the same service on that pole, so.
Is that the one in the alley?
Yeah.
Yeah, the service pole in that alley services both buildings. So if it took down the power, it would have taken us out with it. So I don't know what that's about.
Well, you gentlemen have heard the same that we've heard tonight, and obviously there's some issues here that need to be resolved. I take you at your word that you want to be good neighbors, and I think, you know, I would really encourage you to do whatever you can to make this work, because neither of you are going anywhere, right? So it would be in everyone's best interest, and as was stated earlier, the city will continue to monitor. I mean, the noise, for me, the noise issue was a big deal, because we do have a noise ordinance. But you say you've moved your operation, and all you're doing is sorting in there.
Sorting, and again, if Mr. Bowers wants to come out, but we've assumed he's been out there. I mean, once we realized the threshold of this noise level issue, we've taken care of what we believe to be the problem. there are neighboring businesses in this area. It's an industrial area. There's a tire shop that makes during the summer months, has all their doors open. I don't know if you've ever driven by a Bell Tire or one of the tire places in the summer. You hear all those impact and torque wrenches. That goes on all summer long with the doors open, and that's two buildings down from us. So what I feel is happening is any noise that's happening is being attributed to my client without really trying to find the source of it. And we have one homeowner here who isn't even joining to us, claiming we're creating problems for her. So I think there's a little bit of a gang mentality going on here, and we want to be good citizens. We came to Troy because of the business climate, and we want to work with it. And I think once we become aware of these problems, we have steadily tried to resolve them to the satisfaction of the ordinance department.
All right, thank you. Well, gentlemen, any more discussion? I'm sorry, sir, the public hearing is closed. Is it something that hasn't already been said?
Well, he said there was no noise last week, and just a week ago, Saturday, there was loading a semi right up inside her house. With a big backhoe, it was semi. It's wait till Saturday when no city employees are around, and that's when they go back.
If I may, that was related to having construction equipment on site to level the back lot up, haul the dirt away to get it ready for the paving.
Okay.
I'm going to have to stop it. Public hearing is closed. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, personally, I have an issue giving site plan and special use approval to this site until we have a report from the inspector as to current noise levels and current condition of the rear lot, because we have photographs, two people swearing that they were taken today, and they are diametrically opposed. I don't know who's telling the truth and who isn't, but I would like a report from the city as to the current state. I fully support the fact that this is an industrial property. They can do industrial tasks on it. It has been an industrial property for a long time. I also understand that the mobile home park has been there for a long time, but it is adjacent to industrial property. But there's been a lot of angry words on both sides. I mean, if I were the petitioner, I wouldn't have necessarily said that the people that came tonight had a gang mentality, but that was what was said. So I would propose to postpone this until we can get a report back from the city enforcement arm as to the current state of the business, because what we're being presented here tonight is he said, she said, tattletale kind of stuff, and I don't necessarily want to make a decision based on that.
Thank you. Bill, did you?
No, I concur. I would propose, though, that we ask that it be done by this summer, maybe 2 or 3 months from now, to see how the activities are maintained and how the facility is working. But I don't know if that's possible or not, but I think I'd like to see it in a few months.
A couple things. We were able to pull up Equalizer on here, which tracks enforcement actions. There has not been any inspectors on the site since 2012, which leads me to assume that we haven't got a complaint to have the inspector go onto the site to investigate since 2012.
Just, if I may also state that generally when we have a court date come up, Mr. Bowers is extremely good about going out either the day before or the day of, just to give me a report about what's happening on the property. However, I agree that it's probably been a while because there's been some adjournments to accommodate cleanup. So I'm sure Mr. Bowers will be happy to give you a report if that's the will of the board.
Mr. Savana.
Yeah, just a couple things. We heard a lot of concerned residents this evening that had some complaints, rightfully so, because what was going on in the past was pretty nasty stuff, and it was done without special use approval, which is required. A couple people this evening said, how could the city allow this to happen? Well, we didn't allow it to happen. They didn't get special use approval. That's why they're here this evening, is for special use approval. I understand the two planning commissioners indicating that it's important to take a snapshot of what's out there today. But also keep in mind that what they're proposing is shown in the site plan here, which will essentially serve as a contract. They're proposing to move everything inside, to not have activities related to the recycling facility outside. They're going to be indoors. 2 dumpsters that are typical dumpsters that are associated with most businesses. I also want people to keep in mind that there is a noise ordinance for the city of Troy. What that ordinance essentially mandates is that the noise cannot exceed 65 decibels at the property line. So if we go out there and check, and it's 64 decibels at the property line, guess what? They're in compliance. There will be noise with all uses. That's just a fact of life. I want people to consider that. But I guess my point is we're not approving what happened in the past. We're approving this special use application, including this site plan that's before us this evening.
Thank you. Sir, please. Please, the public hearing is closed. Yes, Mr. Shefke.
Sir, you were asked. This is our meeting now. Thank you.
One of the things that concerns me, if we give this special use permit in approval, special use approval, of the conflict over the fence. This is my fence. Whose fence is it? We need to have proper screening or some kind of plans that we know what screening is going to be put in there, and hopefully some of that screening that's required by ordinance is going to also help with some of the noise level. It might not help totally, but at least they're not going to have a lot of the things that are going back there to be visible from their homes, and I think that we owe them that. That should be straightened out before any special use is granted.
I think that's a good point. If we don't have a survey to say where is the fence now, whose property is it on, and what type of fence is going to be put up if it's not on their property. Do we have a survey indicating where that fence is relative to the property line?
No, that'll be up to the applicant to make a determination of where that fence is. And
I understand. I just wondered if we had anything.
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. Mr. Carlisle, the ordinance says a 6-foot high?
6 foot high minimum, 8 foot high maximum.
And is that discretionary on whose part?
The height or the type?
Height.
The height's discretionary on the applicant. The planning committee, since it is a special use to protect public safety and welfare, the planning commission could require 8 feet high. Okay. The special use.
If the planning commission, and Sue, feel free to jump in. If the planning commission felt that there were secondary impacts associated with this use that really indicated that it would be in the best interest of public health, safety, and welfare to have 8 feet or to have 100% opacity in the screening material, you could require a wall. You could require an 8-foot high wall if you felt that it was related to the use that was being proposed and related to protecting the neighbors and in the name of public health, safety, and welfare. You could do that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kemp, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I got a few comments. I'm just reviewing some of the requirements for special use approval, and some of these items, I mean, we're getting 2 different stories, one being like traffic issues being related to the activity at the site. We don't know if those are really truly current activity or if they're past activities that have caused issues. It also says some of the key things that were brought up in the public comment that concern me. That says that the plan should do everything they can to mitigate dust, noise, fumes, vibrations, smoke. Some of those sorts of things came up in the public hearing I have concerns about. I'd like to get a baseline of analysis that was truly independent on some of those items as well. For those reasons, I think that we should just try and get some more data points to see what the current business is versus what the business was when they originally opened and caused the uproar.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Lancaster, what if someone makes a motion, is it to postpone this item?
Yes, it would be to postpone to a date certain so we know what we're talking about.
And I would request that a motion be made with any specific information that we would want provided to us so that at the next meeting we could bring resolution to this.
That would be an excellent idea.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make it.
Mr. Shepke?
I'll make a motion that we have some of these issues clarified before we take a final vote on it, and so that we can get it taken care of in the next meeting. I don't know if I'm doing it properly, but to the best of my ability.
Specifically, is there anything that you would like to have them present to us or present to staff to present to us?
Yes. To me, one of the big things is the proper screening and the materials and the fence and protecting the neighborhood behind it. Sure, they're adjacent to an industrial property, but they deserve proper screening and proper noise. Anything that can be done to keep the noise levels within a reasonable amount. So we need to protect those neighborhoods. And yes, they're adjacent, but we at least have to have, as a minimum, that. And it really makes me feel a lot better that they're paving that parking lot, because it's just a mud hole right now, and it's going to be a real problem in the spring if we get a lot of rains. It's going to just get worse instead of better.
Do you think you might be able to summarize that in a couple of
Yes. I'll do the very best I can. I think that we need to come up with some, first of all, some ownership on the fence issue and the screening issue, and I'd like to make a motion that this is resolved before a special use is granted in this case.
Would you consider adding to have them submit a survey to indicate?
Yes, I would, a survey and maybe some kind of specifications and at least a rough drawing of what the fence is going to look like and the materials that it's going to be made of.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Edmondson.
I just wonder if Mr. Shepke would also consider amending it to do an 8-foot fence. Very frankly, it's the easterly boundary that abuts the trailer park is pretty narrow compared to the whole site. Is that true, Mr. Savidan?
Could you repeat the question?
How wide, how long is that border on the easterly side that abuts the trailer park? How much fencing actually abuts the trailer park?
What we're talking about, I believe, is this area along the north here.
Where the property abuts the trailer park is an existing I believe it's a 9-foot high concrete masonry wall.
Oh, okay.
The only fence is located along the northern property line and the southern property line, which is adjacent to industrial property. It's on both sides.
Mr. Savidan.
I heard a couple of different things mentioned here. The Planning Commission could save the applicant the expense of paying for a survey and just require an 8-foot wall along that property line. I mean, they're going to have to invest $1,500 in a survey.
Mr. Savidan, who would pay to move that fence if it's not put in the right property? I mean, my point is, they need a survey to know where their property line is.
Right, but what I'm saying is you may not necessarily have to move the fence. You could put a wall on their side of the fence on their property and just eliminate the whole issue of who owns the fence.
No, I understand that, but when they put a fence, right now we don't know the existing fence, if it's on whose property it's on. At some point, this petitioner is going to have to find out where their property line is, assuming that they're not going to use the fence that's currently there. I think it's an important element as far, and I, you know, again, if they're going to pave the parking lot, let's make sure they pave up to their property line. They don't pave on the adjacent property line. I mean, I think there's a lot of good reasons why a survey would be beneficial, not only to this commission, but also to the petitioner.
Can I? Yeah, I would agree that they're going to want to get a survey. That's not the issue. What I'm saying is that it sounded like, based on what we've talked about, is the Planning Commission feels relatively strongly that an 8-foot high wall or fence is required, and we could eliminate the issue of requiring a survey and just say you've got to put up an 8-foot wall, and they'll have to get a survey as part of that to determine what exactly the property line is. But that would eliminate one of the concerns, which is the relationship between this yard and the property to the north.
Okay. Well, Mr. Shepke, you've heard some discussion on your motion.
Boy. Opened up a hornet's nest here. I'm going to maybe, Mr. Edmonds over there with a little bit more experience than me will have a better way of wording it. I think we're looking, both of us are thinking along the same lines. In fact, there's probably more than just two of us thinking along those lines. Don?
Well, I think we can just amend the motion to, as Mr. Savin has suggested, to just have an 8-foot wall. They will have to do a survey to know where to locate the wall.
Right, to get a permit.
That would satisfy me.
Yeah.
Do we have a second yet?
No.
We don't have a motion.
Well, we're working on refining the motion. Yeah.
Still in the process.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes, Mr.
Just curious, what material would the 8-foot wall be made of? You know, a concrete wall could be $40 or $50 a foot versus a slotted material. I think
well, I think the question gets down to the health, safety, and welfare of the adjacent property owners, whether it's damage to their property or to their person. And as you heard Mr. Savinen say, that's our purview if we feel that there's enough concern there from that standpoint. No, there are other ways.
There's other materials than a concrete wall.
Right. Well, I mean, you've seen them in the photographs. There's these concrete blocks that would serve the purpose and are a lot less expensive. All right, so is someone willing to make the motion? Do we know what we want to make the motion?
I'll make a motion that 8-foot fence be installed along the property line to properly screen the adjacent residential area, made of acceptable material, and I guess I'd leave it at that.
Do we have a second? Mr. Savinen, do you have a comment?
Was that for a motion for a postponement?
That was part of the postponement.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. That was kind of supplementing what we need to see. Someone want to second that motion? Or Kathy, could you read back what the motion says? I'm sorry, but I have to do that.
I will try to make
You're
it very
confused.
quick. What I understood Mr. Shepke to say was to postpone the item until all issues are clarified, and he addressed the screening of the fence, the noise levels, ownership of the fence, also the survey, and specs and rough drawing of the fence materials. Secondly, I understood him to say I did not understand it to be postponed, and I may be wrong, but to amend the motion for an 8-foot wall and specifications for the wall material.
To clarify things a little bit, basically, I wanted to have a postponement before we issue a special use, and until it has included in the requirement to have an 8-foot fence along the protecting the residential property and installed in a manner that would, as much as possible, drop the decibel levels of any noise intrusion on their neighbors in the trailer park. So I'm not a real experienced person in making these motions. I just feel that if I was living in that trailer park, yes, I did know that was an industrial area when I moved in, but I think that I should be given all the protection and code enforcement that I deserve as a resident of the city of Troy, and I think those residents should have that as a minimum. They deserve that at least. So that's why I'm trying to get a postponement until we have proper screening back there, because to me, from the pictures I looked at, it shows a lot of damage to that fence that's in there right now, and that's a concern to me.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Just because I see the applicant kind of wavering about what he's supposed to do, can I make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
I'm not a member, but the motion would be to postpone. We would need a new date, and we should see that the petitioner has time to get that material together. But what I understand all of you saying is, number one, you want him to bring in a survey of where the property line is. Number two, you want him to bring in plans for an 8-foot screening wall. And number three, you want Gary Bowers to do a noise study. And Mr. Schultz, you wanted to add something?
In compliance with other ordinances regard to the outdoor use of the property.
Okay, and if we can bring all that back, if one of you could ask the applicant if he can get what he needs to get by perhaps April, I'd ask you to put a date on it, and I think that clarifies the motion. Does that clarify it for the applicant? I would defer to the chair.
Yes, forward.
I just want to clarify here, because there's been talk about the north property line and then the trailer park. The trailer park already has an 8-foot cinder block cement masonry wall, which is the east edge. That wall already exists. What's at issue is the north property line, which has a fence, and again, Mr. Damon indicates they own it. I don't know the answer to that. That's what the survey will answer. So there's two different elements here. The wall exists already for the trailer park. There's nothing more we can do to that. I mean, I suppose we could make it 20 feet high, but it's really the north property line that's at issue here. And as I understand it, you want us to bring a proposal of what we propose to do by way of a screening wall, whether it's a fence, whatever would satisfy the ordinance for screening along the north property line, because we can't do anything along the east property line. The wall exists already. So that's what I'm trying to, so I can come back with the right information.
It's a little confusing to me, especially when one of the residents got up and said that debris was coming into her yard from your facility over there and damaging, and she said that she had been hit by a piece of that metal or whatever debris it was, and that to me, I didn't take it that it was that portion of the wall was proper, or to the extent that it was protecting those neighbors over there, and that's a concern.
Okay, that's an 8-foot cement wall, and so I guess if you're looking for, if we want to make revisions to that, I mean, I don't know.
I wouldn't suggest a 20-foot wall, because we might take you up on that.
Right, well, you know, that was offered in jest. So I just want to clarify which we're talking about.
Mr. Chair, the maker of the motion and the rest of the board members, would you be all right if he brought in a fence plan for the surrounding area? So if there's already an existing fence, he can show you. But if there's the fence shared with the neighbor, the chain link, he needs to show you something that would be opaque and meet our ordinance. I mean, is it a fence plan you want, or do you actually want just that one place that doesn't have any screening? I guess that's the question he's asking. He needs some direction what to bring back.
survey will tell us what's out there and where it is, whether it's 8-foot-high concrete blocks or whether it's a chain link fence that's damaged or whatever it is. I think that's essential for us to get a better understanding of what's out there. I would then ask that, in addition to the survey, that we see some type of a plan as to what he's proposing to do in addition to what's already out there.
We would like a detailed sheet added to the site plan showing exactly how they propose the buffering treatment, the screening treatment between this property and property to the north.
Yes.
For example, if it comes out that they're going to put an 8-foot masonry wall, a detailed sheet showing what that thing's going to look like, height, materials, et cetera.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schultz.
Question, Mr. Savanah. The screening requirement does not exist between this and the property to the south. There's already a fence there. They do not have the same screening requirement between those two properties as they do to the property to the north?
Let me look at the site plan. I can't read mine without, just give me a second.
The site plan indicates on the south end they were going to do slats such as they were going to do on the north end. The reason why I believe the Planning Commission is pushing the applicant to do an 8-foot fence or an 8-foot wall is because we've heard direct testimony from the property owner to the north that that's an issue. However, if since it's a special use, the Planning Commission deems that the buffering along the south end should also be addressed. We should also include the south property line as part of the buffering plan that the applicant will have to resubmit.
I would think it should be both property lines.
Okay.
Are we all set then?
I believe we can work with that, Mr. Chair.
With the one question was, it's the second Tuesday in March, is 1 month, waiting till the next meeting, the second Tuesday in April, is that adequate time to address these issues? I'm sitting here, it sounds like it is, but I'm not the applicant.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
based upon we had to have a sidebar because we have a pending court case. Petitioners directed me to ask you if he could have a May date because it's going to take him some time to get in, but we want the people here tonight to know when the next date is, and I can work with him on the court case to make sure that the court is advised about what's going on here.
So what date would that be?
Regular meeting in May, second Tuesday?
14th.
May 14th,
14th.
according to Mr. Savanah.
Okay. Mr. Schultz.
One more point of clarification. The screening we're talking about would be from the east end of the building, is that correct? Because I don't want these people coming back, putting an 8-foot wall all the way down the property line out to Stevenson Highway.
That's correct.
I won't even ask. We have someone to second the motion.
I second yes, the amended motion by the city attorney.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right. Who's supporting?
Mr. Schultz.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for your patience.
How painful was that?
It was painful for me because
All right. Moving on to the next item. It's special use and preliminary site plan review file number SU 400, proposed Starbucks Qdoba Oakland Mall outlet, northwest corner of John R. and 14 Mile, section 35, currently zone GB, General Business District. Mr. Carlisle?
Yes, thank you. Again, this is a continuation of an item that was considered on the February 12th meeting. At that time, the application was continued so the applicant could address a few outstanding items for consideration. Since that time, the applicant has resubmitted a site plan that addressed all of our last remaining concerns. They have shown that they are able to provide the required 10 stacking spaces. They have shown the bike rack on the plan. They have provided a sidewalk along 14 Mile. The one thing I will note with that is the sidewalk they've shown is 5 feet. However, they are required to put in an 8-foot sidewalk along 14 Mile. And the final location of that sidewalk will be worked out with engineering as part of the final engineering requirements. In addition, in regards to that sidewalk, we had asked the applicant to consider extending that sidewalk along 14 Mile to the proposed to the existing bus stop on 14 Mile. However, the applicant at this time, it's not part into their budget to do that, and so they are not going to provide that sidewalk, extend that sidewalk at this time. In addition, they've added the additional tree that's required under the ordinance. They have.
Could you hang on just one second? Could you ask them to move down the hall? Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yes, they have added the required tree that we had asked for, as well as they'd resubmitted light fixtures, and their photometrics does comply with ordinance requirements. Based on that information, we do recommend approval of the special use and preliminary site plan, provided that the applicant expand the sidewalk to 8 feet, as well as work on the final location with engineering as part of the final site plan review and engineering review.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle? All right, is the petitioner here? Mr. Butler.
Good evening, Mr. Tagle.
Good evening.
Members of the Planning Commission, Jim Butler with Professional Engineering. We have reviewed Mr. Carlisle's letter, and we certainly can expand that 5-foot sidewalk that's depicted on the site plan to 8 feet. We have no issue with that, and we will work with the engineering department as a relationship of how that's going to get installed. It's a little tight with the existing right-of-way that's there, the curb line, and the green belt that's there. We can make it work. We looked at it this afternoon. We don't see we'll have an issue with it. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commission, anything for Mr. Butler? Well, I guess not. It's kind of scary.
Thank you.
This is not a public hearing, but is there anyone in the audience who would like to add a comment? All right. It's back to us. Mr. Schultz.
Just a comment, then I'll put up a resolution.
Okay.
I think it's unfortunate that, I realize we can't ask anyone or demand anyone to do anything off the property. I think it's unfortunate that the petitioner and/or the parent company of Oakland Mall can't see fit to extend the 8-foot sidewalk down to the bus stop, but that's just a personal editorial comment. Resolved that special use approval and preliminary site plan approval for the proposed Starbucks Qdoba restaurant located on the northwest corner of John R. and 14 Mile in Section 34, currently zoned GB General Business District, be granted subject to the following: expand the Maple Road sidewalk to 8 feet, and number 2, work with engineering department to determine the best location for said sidewalk.
Do I have a second?
Was that Maple Road?
I thought I said Maple Road.
Okay, it's 14 miles.
It's 14 Mile. Yeah. It's misprinted in the resolution, sir.
That is impossible.
But that's an
The
interesting
existing
approach.
14 Mile Road sidewalk be expanded to 8 feet. I just read what's here.
Do we have a second? Mr. Edmonds.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Kempton?
If it's 14 Mile, yes.
Sure, we'll do 14.
It is.
All right.
Are you coming up for the next item?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. All right. The next item is preliminary site plan review, file number SP 979, proposed gallery of Troy, north side of Big Beaver between Wilshire and I-75, section 21, currently zoned Big Beaver, BB, Big Beaver District. Mr. Carlisle, is that you again?
Yes, it is. Again, this is a plan that was reviewed at the February 12th Planning Commission meeting. I believe this one might be the 3rd or 4th time the Planning Commission has seen this application. I'm not going to go into too much details about the proposal. However, I will just note a few changes to the plan since the last time the Planning Commission has seen it. As required, the applicant has moved the retail building to 30 feet from Big Beaver Road. This does bring all buildings into compliance with the Big Beaver form-based district setbacks. The applicant has ensured that all the parking is located behind the building, including those along Troy Center Drive or Wilshire Drive. The applicant, as requested, has provided bicycle parking in the Big Beaver public realm, is what we call it. They have also submitted light fixtures on the building and in the pedestrian realm, and submitted photometrics that do comply with all our ordinance requirements. Our only outstanding, we have two outstanding items in regards to the proposal. The first, and these are in regards to architectural details. The first is we still do have concerns over the trash enclosure location of the Bonefish. We note that that to access the Bonefish, you're going to have to walk by that trash enclosure. We have concerns both with aesthetics of that as well as concerns of odor in the summer, etc. I did have a conversation with Mr. Butler in regards to this, and they feel that this is the best solution for their operations as well as their architectural details. I can let Mr. Butler go into more detail about that trash enclosure. And our second item of concern is specifically the architectural details of the Carrabba's itself. We still find that the building design as well as the material selection and color scheme does not fit into the pattern of the design standards of the Big Beaver corridor, as well as meet the standards of those of the retail building and the Bonefish. So overall, we do find that the application has provided a quality development. It really is making some significant improvement to Big Beaver, as well as the Big Beaver pedestrian realm, that space in between the right-of-way and the buildings itself. This will really lend a quality development to Big Beaver. However, we do have two noted concerns in regards to those architectural details. Since those are the only outstanding items that we have concerns about, we are recommending approval of the preliminary site plan conditioned on reflection of the Planning Commission regarding those two items, and if the Planning Commission feels comfortable, we can continue to still work with the applicant on those two outstanding items prior to getting final site plan approval and engineering. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle on this item? Seeing none? Mr. Butler?
Good evening again. Jim Butler with Professional Engineering. As you can see, we did take the time to revise the plan and pull that building 5 foot forward after much discussion and debate from last meeting. What we were able to do architecturally, and Scott Bowers with Bowers Associates is here, is the architect of the retail building. They were able to, we pulled that building 5 foot forward, but we were able to keep that width of the balcony. Because remember, we talked about at great length and very justifiably talking about the width of that outdoor seating area, 5 feet to compromise it, looking to have a couple of tables, having some impact. So we were able to kind of cantilever that a little bit. So the balcony does have that full width that it did before. Related to the trash enclosure for the Bonefish, and Brian, if you could bring up that color elevation. As you can see, they did raise, they being the architecture of Bonefish, did raise the height of the enclosure. It is fully brick. It is designed to match the building. The back does have gates. Those are metal gates. Those aren't a standard wood type gate. It is a fully metal gate. It is fully enclosing the dumpsters. It's meant to integrate into the building, kind of similar to what was done for the Granite City. Granite City has a higher wall around it, but it's extraordinarily similar to that. You know, we did talk at the last meeting. We did have the operations people from Bloomin' Brands, who are the owners of the Bonefish and the Carrabba's, and talking about the issues associated with having a remote dumpster. They have no concerns from an operational standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, from an operational, that will be an issue for them. So, related to the Carrabba's architecture, the building is intended from a color standpoint to blend and be homogeneous with the other two buildings. This building is predominantly a brick building. The only part that is ephes that is on this building are the cornices that you see on the building, the signage band that you see, and the Carrabba's in white. Everything else is a brick veneer. There's not really much else we can do from a standpoint of architectural without completely changing the architectural style of the building. It is a Carrabba's. At the end of the day, that's their image. I think Mr. Bowers has spent a significant amount of time trying to integrate both of them by taking the Bonefish and the Carrabba's. And with the building in the middle, I think he's done a fairly great job, actually, a great job in blending these two together. Architecture is certainly subjective, and I'm certainly up here to say it is done well done. So, you know, that's something that you folks are going to need to decide. But I think everything that you have asked us to do, we have done, and we've incorporated that. So we're here tonight requesting site plan approval for this project. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
Mr. Schultz. One question. One question, one statement. First, I'll start with a statement. I don't know that we as a planning commission can have a whole lot of impact on Carrabba's signature and design. If we're going to say no to Carrabba's red awnings and the EFS sign area, then I guess we have to say no to the entire development. So I don't know that that's a sticking point for me. My other question is the westmost unit of your retail building. Will it be retrofittable with a balcony similar to what is on the east end? Because I got a hunch you're probably going to have a tenant that's going to want to do the same thing.
Yes.
The structure for both of the awnings will be acceptable to carry floor loads.
So you just have to put a stairwell in and probably
Still have to put a stairwell on, but, and a railing.
Because I think you're probably going to have somebody that's going to want to do the same thing on the west end of the building.
I hope we do.
If there are no other questions, I'm ready for a resolution.
Well, let's see, is there any other questions for the petitioner, Mr. Edmonds?
I really like the revision that you made. I do see that you didn't decrease the size of the public art. You still left that the same size
That
as
is
before.
correct. We were able to keep it.
Right.
We listened because it was such an impactful thing, and taking it down, that 5 feet that we were negotiating.
Right.
5 feet shrinking it would have lost its real impact.
And I also agree with Mr. Schultz that it would really be good to consider making the west end, or it would be the west end, similar to the east end in terms of the balcony.
Would agree.
Anything else for the petitioner? I have a couple of observations, and they're certainly not deal breakers in any sense, but professionally speaking, I think that dumpster is going to be a big mistake in the future. Having your customers walk within feet of a dumpster on a hot summer day is just going to be problematic, in my opinion. I don't know if the floor plans could be flopped so that it would at least get it away from the pedestrian walkway. But I think, looking at the back elevation of that and seeing the one side where it's a clear walkway without the dumpster, and then on the west end having the dumpster, I think it's going to be a problem. It's certainly not going to be a problem for the city. It's going to be a problem for the restaurant and the developer. The other comment, as far as the Carrabba's, the only thing that again, professionally speaking, I understand there's image, and I don't know how important those red awnings are, and I don't know how true these colored renderings are, because renderings are hard to get the accurate color. But it would be certainly, I think, help that development be a little bit more homogeneous if those were toned down a little bit and I see the two other awnings on the other buildings, and they have a little bit different color to them. If there could be something done with those awnings to tone those red awnings down and just kind of blend in a little bit better, because those are kind of like screaming at you. And obviously, Carrabba's probably would like that, to have them scream at you. But I think there can be something done to make it a little bit more sensitive to the rest of the development. There was one other comment I was going to make. This happens to me every once in a while. Well, can't think of it.
If I may?
You may.
The dumpster, I guess we're going to agree to disagree. And obviously, the operations people from Bonefish know their business. I certainly don't think they're in the business of discouraging people from coming into restaurants. So we'll leave that one pretty much alone. I think you're right, Mr. Tagle. I think the colors that's shown on that rendering are probably a little bit over-exaggerated. I wish I had the fabric. It's more in the lines of a maroon, a red to maroon. It's not that starking, that color. So I think it's a little off. Okay. I would agree with you.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman, I had one other.
Yep.
I heard Mr. Butler say that the back of the dumpster is steel. Did you say steel?
The gates to it are steel.
Is it chain link?
No, it's a metal.
Solid metal.
Solid metal. It's ribbed. It's not just like you would normally do with wood gates, where you would take a chain link fence, put the gate on top of it, and strap it on. No, this is an architectural style gate.
Thank you.
I did think you had enough time to recall, and I don't know if this is yet a question for you. What does our ordinance say about artwork? And I mean, they've shown something on the drawings, but is that really what it's going to look like? Has it been designed yet? Is it something, I mean, when we're approving this plan, are we going to expect to see what we see on this plan? I mean, when we look at the buildings, we expect to see that. And I guess first question was to you as far as our ordinance, does it speak to that? And secondly, to the petitioner, have they designed the artwork yet? So let me direct it to you.
Mr. Chair, I do not believe we have any ordinance that speaks to what they choose to put as their artwork. We would expect anything. There are certain criteria about indecency and obscenity that we could enforce, but I don't think that they have that in mind. No. So, but in terms of, you're right, they're probably going to commission it or need to get someone to do the artwork. It's probably too early to ask them if they've done that, but we probably would only have control over maybe how large it is in terms of the diagram.
That's the thing. Scale, materials.
Location, scale, scope, materials.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say it has to be this, but again, I think they've presented something here for us to approve, and there have to be some parameters. We're accepting what they're presenting, and they have to live up to that.
I think the plan is meant to designate this, as Brent said, the height, the scale, the width, not necessarily what's going to go in there, but to make it, to pull the architecture together. And so hopefully something similar that we would want them to do.
I'd say more than hopefully, if we'd want. Now, Mr. Butler, how are we doing with the artwork?
It has not been commissioned. It has not been designed. It is just, as Mr. Savinon had pointed out, it's for the purpose of essentially a placeholder, for height, width, style kind of things. It's not been designed by any stretch of the imagination. And I understand your issue, and you are approving everything else, but then you have this thing. It's a challenge. I don't know how to tell you.
And again, I don't, for me personally, I'm not asking you to tell me what exactly it's going to look like, but if I see a piece of artwork or a piece of art here that's going to be 18 feet high or 20 feet high, I wouldn't expect something to come out as 5 feet high.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So the parameters of what you're indicating to me, I would think would be established. Yeah.
Because that was what was the important part. Sorry, Mr. Stratt is not here, of that central focus, that central plaza area, that pedestrian realm that was so important. And like you said, putting a 5-foot piece of art isn't going to do it.
Mr. Schultz.
Just to build on that, in looking at your renderings, one of them has this rather large 18-foot tall, considerable mass piece of art, and then the rendering of the entire complex on the Big Beaver Road exposure shows an 18-foot tall pole with 1 square on top of it. That's not what we're looking for.
Well, I would suggest that maybe before this gets installed, before it gets crafted and created, that we might come in for an informal, with no action, but just to come in front of you. So you at least have a peace of mind of what's going in there. Would that be fair? I mean, so you guys have, a say, somewhat.
And I think, Jim, you've heard our
right. I heard your concerns, and I understand. If I'm on that side of the table, I completely understand it. But at least you guys know what's going in before it goes in. Not to say we're asking you to vote on it, approve it, but at least understand what's going on. And I'm sure with the developer who's involved with this, with the architect that's involved with it, it'll be tastefully done, and it'll be truly a focal point. As you can see, the energy and the effort, and, you know, obviously the considerable money that's going to go into that building. You're not going to want to do something like that. Right. So well, I think we would be willing to do that.
Thank you. Anything else? Well, I just want to ask if there's only anyone, it's not a public hearing, but I'm committed to asking if there's anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment. Seeing no one, Mr. Schultz.
Resolve that preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Galleria of Troy located on the north side of Big Beaver between Wilshire and I-75 in Section 21 in the BB Big Beaver District be granted.
Mr. Sutton.
Can I make one point? Can we also, Mr. Schultz, consider stating that the Planning Commission approves outdoor seating on the balcony area on the west portion of the building, if so desired by the petitioner, just so it's clear?
I thought I already said that.
You did, very eloquently at that.
I heard it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Shepke? Kathy?
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Kepman?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
You'll be open by spring?
Again, thank you so much. I know we spent a lot of time looking at this and had some pretty good discussions about things. And obviously, I think at the end of the day, I think we got a very good project. And I think you'll be very proud of it.
Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your efforts. All right, next item, public hearing, special use and preliminary site plan review, file number SU 399, proposed Detroit Meeting Room north of Square Lake and I-75 Expressway, east of Adams, Section 6, currently zoned R1A, one family resident district. Mr. Carlisle?
Thank you. The application before you is a proposed 3,000 square foot meeting hall on the north side of Square Lake, just east of Adams Road. There was some confusion with the application as well as the site plan. It did indicate a school. However, the school has been removed from the site plan, and we are only considering tonight the meeting hall facility. A meeting hall is considered a place of worship, thus has to go through a special use process review. The site plan is 3 parcels for a total of 5 acres. The development will occur mostly or entirely on the western side of the parcels. This area is the widest area of the 3 parcels in total. In regards to area width and setbacks, places of worship are required to maintain a 50-foot setback from all property lines, as well as a 75-foot setback from I-75. The applicant does meet all the required setbacks. The applicant is proposing a 14-foot tall building, and again, this meets or is greatly less than the maximum building height in the permitted zoning district. By ordinance, the applicant is required to provide 60 parking spaces for this size of this building. However, in discussions with the applicant, they have noted that the 60 parking spaces is not necessarily needed nor desired by the applicants themselves. If the applicant is willing and the Planning Commission grants it, the applicant can show what we refer to as land bank parking, which is parking that's shown on the site plan but not actually built unless the required that parking is deemed to be needed at a future time. So that's something that I think the applicant should be, we should discuss with the applicant their willingness to land bank some of that parking based on their projected needs. In addition to the parking, a few of the parking spaces, mostly along the north side, are deficient in terms of length. I believe they are 1 to 2 feet deficient, so that needs to be corrected on a revised site plan. Access to the site will be via one curb cut on Square Lake Road. There is a significant grade change from Square Lake Road to the site itself, so that will require some engineering, but that will be dealt with in the final engineering phase of development. Engineering has reviewed the access point and does note that they will need to confirm an adequate site vision clearance, but again, this is something that's typically dealt with in the final engineering stage. The applicant has submitted a landscape plan. The landscape plan meets all requirements. We do have some questions. They show 8 trees on the plan around the parking lot. There's just no information about what those trees are and whether or not they're existing and or they're going to be preserved trees or they're going to be new proposed trees. In addition, the landscape plan does show a edge of construction. We do want to note that their line of construction is just to the north of the existing, of the proposed parking lot location. And I want to get clarification from the applicant if that edge of construction is actually the edge of grading. If it is the edge of the grading, they will maintain mostly a 50-foot or essentially basically a 45-foot tree buffer from the adjacent northern property. If the applicant is able to maintain that edge of grading at that location, that 50-foot or 45-foot tree buffer should be sufficient for proper screening to the northern properties. In addition, if the applicant were willing to do land bank parking, we would request that the land bank parking that not be built at this time is the northern parking area. That would again add more buffer for the adjacent property owners to the north. Lastly, the applicant has shown both a light pole as well as some landscaping in the right-of-way. That will have to be removed because we do not allow private structures or private improvements in the right-of-way. Since this is a special use, we did review it under the special use standards as outlined in section 9.03. These deal with issues of compatibility, consistency with the master plan, traffic impact, impact on public services, as well as zoning compliance. Outside of some of the parking issues, the landscape issues, and the removal of items from the right-of-way, we do note that they meet the required special use standards. So in summary, we do support the application, do support the site plan. However, prior to granting preliminary site plan approval, because there is a few significant site plan issues to be addressed, we do recommend that the applicant address the following before the Planning Commission grants special use approval as site plan approval. And these issues, just for reiteration, are grading limits on the north end of the parking lot, the consideration of land bank parking by the applicant, the reconfiguration of the parking lot to provide the proper length of parking stall length, as well as removal of all items in the right-of-way. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Carlisle? All right, is the petitioner present? I'd like to step forward.
Good evening. I'm Mike Gordon, the architect for the congregation, and I want to thank you in advance for your consideration tonight, and I will try to be brief in my comments. I'm from Moisey Gordon Associates, architects in Royal Oak, Michigan. With me are several members in attendance, and I would like to also thank Brent. This was a very challenging site. It was never platted. It is not part of the subdivision. As you can see, the lot coverage is only, for the building, is only 1.3%. We have a lot of land. We've taken a lot of time and consideration working with them and trying to come up with something because of the unique nature of the site. Is one of the last parcels that has never been developed in the community. We feel that the 3,000 square foot building is a residential in scale. It blends well with the neighborhood to the north and will have very little impact. The survey shows so far 700 landmark trees on the site. And because of the time of year, we were unable to determine the viability of all the trees and the species. So once the weather breaks, we'll be willing to work, and one of his questions was, are those existing trees or not existing trees? We're hoping to preserve as much of the site as possible. 85% of the site will be preserved in the landscape, and we are sensitive to that. Our engineer came back to us and said because of the small nature of the footprint, and if we do indeed land bank more of the land to the north, which we're willing to do because the congregation has high occupancy vehicles, that the number of spaces was dictated more by code than by necessity of the congregation. We're willing to come back and review the dead, damaged, and species of the trees and hopefully preserve as much vegetation as possible. In one instance, we said we might actually have to cut something down to plant the required trees, so we're hoping that we can preserve what's there. Further, last Saturday, the congregation hosted an open house and invited all the adjoining neighbors and I believe all of you. We had a good time. No one showed up. So we made an effort to reach out to the community, and we had a good time, like I said. And if you have any questions, I'd be willing to answer them. And as far as the grading, my engineer has assured me, based on the landscape plan, that your request for that 5 foot to the north is no issue. We, again, be willing to land bank the parking to the north up to that whole run right there. The length of the stall, that was an oversight, and there's room to do that. I think there was just a mathematic error on our part. And the removal of the landscape in the right-of-way. I think, are you referring to the retaining walls? Is that, or what?
The site plan just indicates a landscape feature.
Oh, okay.
That, and there's also, I believe, there's a light pole in the right-of-way as well.
The light pole was, again, that in the right-of-way? Okay.
Yeah.
It's not showing there, but I don't. Anyway, we'd be willing to remove that. It's not a problem. And I know the illumination that we proposed did comply to your standards. So if you have any questions, John would like to address you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. My name is John Reed. I'm the president of the Detroit Meeting Rooms, which is the holding corporation for our property. And we have a number of congregation members in the Troy area, in the neighborhood, and we're looking forward to being good citizens, good and community support in the Troy area.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Mr. Schultz.
Two. In looking at the site plan, nowhere on the driveway is there any kind of a closing lockable gate, which, having been to other facilities, they all have locking gates, or most of them. So I'm assuming that there will be no gate locked out near Square Lake Road to keep people out of this parking lot.
Which is your preference?
I'm assuming there will be no gate installed because it's not on the site plan. Secondly, in the site plan, or in the elevation, it shows us vinyl siding and wood columns and 1x5 trim, but nowhere does it say whether the window openings are glazed window openings or faux window openings. Are the windows going to be glass, or are the windows going to be boarded up?
They're not going to be boarded up. They're going to be glass.
Because here again, the vast majority of facilities that I took pictures of the last time this group was here, their windows are all boarded up, and it makes for a very unattractive look because the people from these houses are still going to be able to see this building.
They will be fully glazed.
Anyone else? Mr. Edmonds?
Yeah, I was out there today and climbed the high berm off of Square Lake and made it back down successfully, but I'm concerned. I couldn't tell, just now that I see the plan, how big a grade difference is there from the Square Lake, the roadway there, and where it enters your property on the eastern end there?
There's actually a swale there. You know, the road is a little bit higher, then it dips down, and then it climbs up. There's about an 8-foot grade between the center of that site and the roadbed. Right, and we're not going to exceed the 6%, which is required, and it does work mathematically.
Thank you.
Question for Mr. Savedant, and this will probably come up in engineering. Does the city have any requirements for the maximum grade for public sidewalks?
It's a building code issue. They'll have to comply with the building code. So yes, there are grading requirements that they'll have to meet.
Hence the switchback sidewalk, because we applied the same math to get the right distance.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? All right, gentlemen, would like to have a seat. Thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forth on this?
Thank you, Commissioner John. I was here technically by mistake. I was here for the other thing. But I'd just like to consider that the only thing left in the city of Troy is our neighborhoods. You've already extended special requests into our industrial parks. We got service parks, we got service clubs in our industrial parks. We're also talking about putting lofts in our industrial parks. We only got our residential left, and that's the basic tax base in this city. Now, people keep coming into this city asking for special favors, and then they take the land out of our tax base. And then as we saw in the library issue, we got to the point we got to vote in a special tax just for the library. I'm not against these different people, but technically, even if this was a big concern, it's outside our school district's taxing area if this was a taxable business, but it's not. It's in the area of Troy that's very difficult to come off I-75, and that exit, no matter what the traffic guy says, is not a very good exit. It's not lit, okay? So all I'm saying is that there's also thousands of square feet of commercial industrial buildings in this city that they could easily modify for whatever contraption, wherever they want to do inside these buildings, okay? That could be easily done because now service clubs can be inside of our industrial parks. Why should they take taxable land that, as you know, in the future is going to be high-value taxable land and put it into a nonprofit? And that's what I see time and time again in this city, is that nobody considers what it does to the future of this city. So I'm just considering the fact that how can you be taking land out of the building houses when we make building a solar park on a city park? And now we're going to take residential land and build churches. Now when is this? And then we're going to take industrial land and build lofts. Now we got to get some type of figure out how this city, like I said, what type of city does we want? And it's so fluid, nobody can picture out it. Like you said, that Starbucks, 8 feet of cement the guy didn't want to put in, and then we're going to make this other guy build a 40-foot fence 8 foot high. This is sort of ridiculous. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else? Close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Oops. Oh, what?
Do we have one?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mike Hatting. Just to mention, as part of the congregation, I think this facility will be of great value. Those attending the facility will be from the neighbouring areas, so they wouldn't be travelling generally on I-75 and needing to use the exit. And this will provide for a need that the members of the congregation living in the residential areas have been needing. Currently, they've been attending the meeting halls in Clawson or Royal Oak, so this will be a very beneficial facility. And being unusual shaped lots and gradients, it would be very difficult to use them in a normal residential way or for commercial purposes. So to all intents and purposes, it's probably the highest and best use of this land to accommodate a church facility such as this.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Back to the commission. Discussion, Mr. Edmonds?
Well, I'm just really pleased. I think this is a site that probably would not be developed. It's been like this for many years. And compared to the previous site with the Detroit Meeting Room people, we had all kinds of people here in the chamber that were opposed to it. So I think this is a good solution, and not every residential site can be developed and go on the tax rolls. This will serve a good purpose. I'm pleased with it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Someone like to make a motion? Mr. Kempton?
Sure. Resolved for that the special use approval and preliminary site plan approval for the proposed Detroit Meeting Room north of Square Lake and I-75 Expressway east of Adams, Section 6, currently zoned R1A, single-family residential district be granted, subject to the following. Indicate the grading limit north of the parking lot. Adjust our parking lot dimensions. Consider land bank parking as suggested by the petitioner, and install bicycle parking. Clarify the 8 trees within and along the exterior of the parking lot. Remove the landscape feature from the Square Lake right-of-way. Relocate the light that is in the Square Lake public right-of-way. Provide the proposed days and hours of operation of the facility.
One second. Who got their hand up first? Mr. Sanzika?
Thank you.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Congratulations, gentlemen. All right, the next item is another public hearing. Special use and preliminary site plan review, file number SU 402, proposed gypsum supply company, east side of John R., north of 14 Mile Road, 651 Robbins, section 36, currently zoned IB, integrated industrial and business district. Mr. Carlisle, again?
Yes,
Oh,
thank
you've
you.
been busy.
I'm busy. Getting my money's worth tonight. The applicant is located at 651 Robbins Drive. They are an existing facility. They are seeking special use approval to utilize a portion of the back of their site to fence in and use for outdoor storage. In discussions with the applicant, they are proposing to store building material, supplies, and other materials that will be able to be stored outdoors without sort of any impact in any weathering. Key interest to note regarding the plan, the storage yard itself encloses a fire hydrant. In working with the fire department, the applicant will provide a Knox box for access as requested by the fire department, as well as maintain any area around the fire hydrant will be free and clear at all times. The applicant has submitted an amended site plan that shows where the actual storage is going to be located, and again, this shows clearance around the site, and so they will be, as Mr. Savadan had indicated with earlier submittals, this is a contract, so they will be required to maintain those open access areas. It's worth noting, too, that the storage yard would eliminate 38 parking spaces. The applicant has shown additional parking would be to the west end of the building. However, we do note that by ordinance, they are required to have 62 spaces. They're only showing 59 total spaces on the site with their relocated parking. The 59 is okay and can be approved by the Planning Commission, provided that the applicant provides justification and evidence to the Planning Commission's satisfaction that 59 parking spaces, instead of the 62 as required, would be sufficient for the use. The application has been reviewed by all special use standards. I mentioned those at the last review, and so we do support the project and do recommend approval of the site plan as well as the special use approval, provided that the parking deficiency can be approved to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Edmonds?
Yes, Mr. Carlisle, I was out there today, and it looks, are they requesting areas for outdoor storage, or because what I saw there today, they're using all those areas already for outdoor storage?
This is a request for outdoor storage. If they are currently storing outdoor storage, then they are doing so against the ordinance requirements. So this would be to bring the site more into compliance.
In fact, as a follow-up, I was really amazed at how much is. They're not stacking them very high. You know, they're not, you know, over 4 feet high or anything like that. But I only counted even up at where the employees are parking. There's only like, I think I counted 28 spaces up in the front, and that's where everybody parks. I don't think anybody parks in the back, and it's all used for outdoor storage already.
Yeah, the 62 spaces are simply a function of the zoning ordinance. They, according to their information provided, they have 20 employees at maximum peak. So the 20 employees parked there, plus you said there's about 28 spaces, so 8 spaces are used by customers or some other operation. So again, the 62 is a function of the ordinance.
I also saw that one of the handicap spaces had storage, steel structure there in the handicap space, so near the front entrance. Thank you.
Anyone else for Mr. Carlisle? All right, is petitioner present?
Good evening. My name is Nathan Robinson with Horizon Engineering. The applicant is also here as well.
I'm Ben Rausser with Gypsum Supply Company.
Just to address a couple of the concerns that came up. One, there's a discrepancy, I want to say, on the parking count. I've added these numbers up 3 or 4 times, and I am arriving at 64 spaces provided, 62 required. That includes the spaces outside of the outdoor storage area. There's actually technically, I guess, there's 2 handicap spaces within the outdoor storage area, and then the additional spaces provided in the westerly end of the building. If you add all the spaces up, it equals 64, 62 is required. If those 2 handicap spaces within the enclosed area needed to be excluded, we're still at the required parking count. And actually, if you look closely at the site plan along the westerly property line, I've got 22 spaces shown there. There's room at each end of that parking bank to add an additional 2 spaces if we had to. So we meet the parking requirements. And actually, on the subject of the barrier-free spaces, parking lots that have between 50 and 74 parking spaces require 3 barrier-free spaces, which are in front of the building. So essentially, those 2 barrier-free spaces that are within the enclosed area, they could go away and it wouldn't affect any of the barrier-free requirements. Regarding the outdoor storage, there is outdoor storage out there today. Actually, that's the reason why we're here. The applicant doesn't actually own the property. He's leasing the property from the property owner. And after he moved in there and he's got his outdoor storage out there, he was actually cited with a violation, which brought to him the attention that outdoor storage is allowed in the district subject to a special use. So that's what triggered this whole process and applying for a special use approval for the outdoor storage to bring them into compliance with the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
If you have any other questions.
Yeah, any questions for the petitioner? Yes, Mr. Edmonds?
How long have you been there?
We've been in that building since July.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Schultz?
What is the expected or intended height, maximum height of this outdoor storage? Are you going to put racking in, or is it ground, just sitting on the ground, or what?
We would like to have some racking, but my understanding to the ordinance is it has to be below the screen wall, so like 6 foot.
The outdoor storage stacking cannot exceed the height of the proposed fence, which is 6 feet high.
Resolution to include
Yeah,
that.
it's an ordinance requirement.
Because you do have residential just to the north of you, and I don't think those people deserve to see 10 or 12 foot tall racks full of metal out their front window.
And I think that was kind of almost by default when they laid the materials out there, that kind of assumed that because there was a concrete wall there that they would not stack the materials up basically taller than the wall.
Anything else for the petitioner? If you could just have a seat, please. It's a public hearing. If there's anyone out there that would like to speak to this item, please step forward. We'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to the commission. Mr. Sanzika.
Chairman, I'd like to resolve that the special use approval and preliminary site plan approval for the proposed Gypsum Supply Company, east side of John R., north of 14 Mile Road, 655 Robbins, Section 36, currently zoned IB, Integrated Industrial and Business District, be granted subject to the following. Provide additional information related to the types of materials to be stored outdoors. Provide fire department with Knox box on gate. indicated on the site plan a general storage layout plan, provide number of employees on largest shift to provide accurate required parking calculations, and additional parking on site, reconfigure outdoor storage location to provide adequate parking or request a deviation from the parking standards, which may or may not apply. So that's it.
Second that.
All right. Mr. Savinant, did you have a comment?
Just, I think I confused the planning commission, because what happened was the changes that we've talked about that were conditioned in the resolution were already addressed by the applicant. He submitted a revised site plan yesterday that wasn't in the packet. So technically, the resolution's fine. They've already met all the standards that you set.
All right. Mr. Schultz.
One more comment and clarification. So outdoor storage is going to be restricted to the north side of the building, and if there's any outdoor storage on the west side of the building, it will be a code violation, and we can call the code enforcement people in to handle that, correct?
That is correct. But if you want to make the record even cleaner than it is, you can certainly say that all storage to be in the fenced area on the north side of the property. But that what you said is a correct statement.
I'll let the code officer write a ticket for it if it happens.
Did we have a second? Mr. Schultz, did you second the motion?
I'll second. It's already been seconded, correct.
Okay. Kathy?
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Thank you. Congratulations. All right. Moving on. Item number 10, zoning ordinance text amendment, file number ZOTA 245, sober living facilities. One more?
Let me grab my notes. Just place them. I can't find my notes. I'll wing it. The item before you tonight is a continuation of discussion that we've had with the Planning Commission. I believe this is the third or fourth time for the proposed text amendment language to allow sober living facility. The only change since the Planning Commission last considered the item was based on the discussion of the Planning Commission. We did clarify that this was for adult patients only. We put a provision in there that all patients have to be 18 years or older. In addition, we put adult into the definition itself. Outside of that, that's the only change in the ordinance language that the Planning Commission did not previously consider. If the Planning Commission is comfortable with this proposed language, we will schedule a public hearing to consider the proposed text amendment and go through the required findings, et cetera. Director Savinant.
Mr. Savinant.
Yeah, I actually jumped the gun a little bit, Mr. Chairman. I actually already scheduled the public hearing. The reason I did that is we discussed this item a number of times, and based on dialogue at the last meeting, our understanding was that there was a general acceptance of the language with some minor tweaks that Mr. Carlisle mentioned. To not schedule it, we would, with notification requirements, would have just delayed this a number of weeks, kind of, I thought, unnecessarily. So as I indicated in the memo, I already, in the cover memo, that I already scheduled a meeting just to keep us moving along. I'm sure David is happy about hearing that. I did notice one thing when Mr. Carlisle was making his presentation. We agreed, based on feedback we had at the meeting, as well as the conversation we had with Mr. Lohr, just talking about the industry in general. We changed the name of recovery facility to sober living facility, but we changed it in the definition, but we did not change it in the proposed standard text, which we will change for the public hearing. So it's going to be called a sober living facility instead of a recovery center.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Mr. Schultz?
Just to clarify, the definition we're seeing, the underlined areas are what has been changed. So it is in addition to minimum of 18 years of age, typically 24 months or less, and licensed and certified professional or trained non-professional and paraprofessional have
Yes.
been added. Is that correct?
If it's underlined, it's added. If it's struck through, it's still proposed to be deleted.
From what the Planning Commission saw at the last consideration. And just to note, the small changes to the definition were also based on discussions we've had with the applicant and based on best practices in regards to these facilities themselves.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Edmonds.
I seem to recall the minutes even from that meeting saying that we were going to call it an adult recovery center. Why are we going back to sober living? I think Kathy even had that in her minutes for that.
We went back to sober living because in discussions with the applicant, that's kind of the universal term that's used in the industry, and so we want to be consistent with what the industry uses. In addition, the applicant has noted that they are working with the state of Michigan regarding licensing. It appears that the state of Michigan would adopt similar language in terms of the name itself. In regards to the adult, we felt that we had covered the adult aspect of it by including adult in the definition itself, as well as requiring adult standards or adult age requirements in the actual specific use standards as well. So we feel like we covered it in both ends.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Based on, and this is a text amendment, as we talked about, that applies across the board, but Mr. Lord and Mr. Smith have significantly more experience in this realm than we do. They both indicated that it's more commonly known as a sober living facility, but they also then said they're fine with it either way because the regulations will be, as long as the regulations are clear. But we just thought that based on the fact that it's more of a common jargon, that it would be more appropriate to call it sober living facility. But again, they didn't think it was a deal breaker. We're just trying to be more clear.
Is good, Mr. Edmonds?
Whatever, if it works for the applicant and then it works for the state, I just think it's going to be kind of awkward if the state comes back and says, we're going to call this an adult recovery center. Do we know for sure they're going to call it a sober living center?
That's pretty much an industry standard.
Pretty much.
Okay.
I mean,
And there's no licensing right now, so I don't know. So the state doesn't have any licensing requirements for this type of facility right now, correct?
Well, I would think too, if it changes and we felt it important to reflect whatever the state law is reflecting, that we could do that too. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had one question. I think I started to go down this path last time, but the 2,500 square feet per adult for lot area requirement, that would be the physical dimensions of the lot?
It's a lot requirement. It's not a unit requirement. It doesn't require 2,500 square foot per unit, but it's the number of units is based on the lot size, and that 2,500 per lot size is standard that we use for similar facilities of adult. For convalescent center and some other similar type uses, we base on lot area to determine the number of units and or residents.
Okay, so if you had, say, a facility with 10 adults, you'd need 25,000 square feet of lot area then. And then there's no restrictions on building within that lot area?
There are the normal setbacks and height and other bulk regulations, yes. And parking. Obviously, parking is a limitation on size of a facility.
Right, okay. I just want to make that clarification so everybody's in agreement there. So, sounds good.
Mr. Lord, do you have any comments? Anything you want to add?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, would someone like to make a motion?
There's no
motion?
There's no motion necessary.
All right. So public hearing. Oh, what?
Do you agree, Mr. Carlisle?
Well, I agree there's not a motion. I want to just give a 2-second background on the Planning Commission on what the next steps for this application are going to be. Once the Planning Commission has the public hearing, which Mr. Savidan has already scheduled, it will then go to the city council for a first reading and a second reading. After that point, it will then be a legal use with regulations in the zoning ordinance. The applicant will come back to the planning commission in regards to a rezoning, special use, as well as a site plan review. And that point, we'll take it through that process. So it goes to city council first, then it comes back to the planning commission for the application of the actual, this facility in question.
Mr. Schultz, did you?
Question for Ms. Lancaster. Would it be appropriate for us to put a resolution on the table advising Mr. Sabanat that he should run an advertisement for a public hearing?
Well, it's required under the city charter and also the state law, so I think he's already done it.
I know he's done it, but isn't he supposed to do it at our direction?
Well, if you, it doesn't really matter,
Okay,
but if
it
you
doesn't
feel
matter,
like
fine.
there should be a motion to direct him, actually, let's make a motion to direct him to do a public hearing. That's why we're clarifying how the board feels. I think that's a good idea.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we instruct or direct Mr. Sabanat to advertise for a public hearing on this matter at the earliest possible date.
Thank you. Second?
I'll support.
Mr. Edmonds?
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
What is the date, Mr. Sabanat?
May 26th.
May 26th. Thank you, Kathy.
Mr. Chair, that, in line with that, I think it kind of clarifies where we're going, so I think it's a good idea.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Schultz, for your astute observation. All right, item number 11. Are there anyone in the audience that would like to make comments for items that are on this current agenda? Seeing no one, we'll close that, and we'll wrap it up with Planning Commission comments. Ms. Lancaster, would you like to start us off?
I'd be delighted. I have no comments. Good to see you all.
Good to be seen. Mr. Savanah?
No comments.
Mr. Sanzika?
No comment.
Mr. Edmonds?
No comment.
Mr. Kempen?
Flying the train, no comments.
Mr. Schultz?
You think you're getting by me, you're wrong. Number one, I am so excited. About 2 days ago, I drove by the transit center location, and it's about 40 feet off the ground, and it looks really, really nice. And secondly, here again, an editorial comment. I can't believe that businesses move in and don't even look to see if what they're doing is legal in a city. We had two examples tonight of people moving in thinking that they can do anything they want to. And, you know, I just find it astounding that they don't read the rules before they open a business. I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Shipke?
No comment.
Mr. Carlisle?
No comment.
Derek? No?
No comment.
Ms. Zarnecki?
No comment, thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you, the commissioners, for this this first item that we moved up. It was a difficult item, but I think it's really hard when you're hearing opposing stories and who do you believe and who's exaggerating and who's not. But I think we did the right thing, and I appreciate all of your input on that. And with that, I'll say good night. Meeting adjourned.